Hi, I'm Commissioner Nancy Jester, and welcome to Nancy Jester Reports for Tuesday, July 16th, 2019. I'd like to review basically 2 weeks of work because I didn't get a chance to do a video last week, and last week was a very important week. We had our official Board of Commissioners meeting where we voted on the mid-year budget and set the millage rates. So it was a great meeting. We had a great outcome. I have to give my colleagues credit. I have to give the CEO credit. This is the first time I have been able to vote yes on the budget, and we have a millage rate. The countywide tax rates are below the rollback rate for this year, so I think that may be unique in the metro area right now. Certainly no increase, and the countywide rates that are part of the overall aggregate millage rate, again, were below the rollback rate. So good job to my colleagues on that. You are also seeing, for the first time since I've been on the commission, basically a zero addition at mid-year in the budget, which is a big deal because we've seen the DeKalb had a habit, a very unhealthy habit, of bloating the budget in the mid-year, year after year, when they would see maybe some more reserve funds were available. We have been very good stewards and protected our reserves and put them away. We've not been spending them on additional programs or personnel that then bloat the budget in perpetuity and so on. We've been able to take care of some of the needs that we have. We certainly have needs as a county by using savings from various buckets where maybe we didn't hire the staff that was that you had in the original budget, so you could just sort of move some things around to take care of the priorities that did pop up in mid-year. But we didn't have to increase the budget. We had no big amendments there, or no amendments that cost money for the mid-year, which is the first time that has ever happened since I've been on the commission. So I felt like everybody really towed the line. We've been watching our financials, which is something we were not doing when I came on the board. But we get monthly financial statements. We talk about it with a lot of granularity with our CFO. We have established policies in our finance committee, and I give my colleagues credit. They've allowed me the privilege of being the chair of the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee for the last 2 years, and we have made progress and totally revamped the way the county processes and reviews financials, processes the budget, and uses the audit function. We are much more aggressive now with using that audit function. We've saved millions, and we'll talk about some savings we saw today in one of our committees. So that was what we did last week. On to this week. Today is the 16th. So we met as a committee of the whole today, where we review what we're going to do next week in our board meeting, and we look at and we received some presentations. Today we received a presentation from the Planning and Sustainability Department regarding erosion and sediment control ordinances. Now, I know this might sound boring, but it isn't. It's very important because, when you have property that's near floodplains and runoffs, you need to know that. You need to be able to access information from the county that discusses that, so you understand the property that you have and those around you. So we are updating our ordinance to reflect it's going to reflect some new standards so that we match the Georgia, the state code of Georgia, and what the EPD wants us to do. So I'll put this information up on the website or put it in social media so you guys can take a look at this. I think the county is also seeking some feedback on this ordinance change. There'll be a public hearing coming up, so stay tuned for that in some of our agendas, because if you have a particular interest in erosion sediment control ordinances, please come to the public hearings and give us your input. So that's very important. Let's see. One thing that I asked in the committee of the whole, and I'll tell you what the administration's answer was. I asked what the status was for the procurement for the emergency medical services, the ambulance services. As you know, we've been continuing to extend that, the current contract with AMR. I'm not a fan of the extension simply because we're prolonging the procurement process. I'd like a more efficient, robust procurement process. I think we should have already been here. We should have already had a recommendation presented to us that we could review, deliberate on as a board, and then approve and move forward. So I'm very disappointed with the procurement process. That is in no way, shape, or form a disappointment in the fire rescue department. They are just a user department for procurement services in the county, so they're not driving the procurement process. They're just one of the inputs there. So I've asked because I expected to see it on today's agenda for voting next week. It's not on here. I asked where we were. I was told we're still in the evaluation process, so no recommendation is forthcoming from the administration on that. So I am disappointed in that. I will continue to follow that. Obviously, that's a very important county service that we need to get right. So stay tuned for more information on that. So we met today. We had our Finance Committee meeting and Finance Audit and Budget Committee meeting. We went over financial statements for June, the end of June, for all of our tax funds and our enterprise funds, watershed and sanitation and all that. Things are looking good. Trying to find here we go. So here's what they look like to start with. This is just the general fund. So things are looking very good, and we are tracking on as we would expect. We're midway through the year, so we're tracking as we should, about 50% of expenses at this point. Some departments more conservative than others, so we continue to follow that and get more details on that. We talked today about our travel policy with regards to how people get reimbursed and how we may have a travel agent sort of do travel uniformly for us, so we don't have a hodgepodge of ways people utilize that particular feature of the county when they need to travel for business. We talked about the utility customer service operations center, the UCO as we call it. So when you have a water billing issue, you call into them. And so we talked about their staffing levels. We wanted an update on that. And how their compensation structure is and their retention. This was sort of a follow-up to a previous presentation we had asked them to give us. Now, next week, I believe it is, in our Public Works Committee, which I also sit on. I don't chair that committee. I chair FAB, but I sit on the Public Works Committee. We're having the Citizens Oversight Committee for water billing will be presenting to us. I'm very interested in that, and I will definitely have something to report to you regarding that presentation. So one of the things I did bring up to the UCO staff is I often, it's not an everyday occurrence, but routinely I get calls from people that tried to get service, put in the paperwork, but are then told it's going to be 6 days before their water gets turned on or some number like that. And we need to compress that time. That is ridiculous. Other utilities around other jurisdictions certainly don't make customers wait that long. The production of water is basically, it's almost a zero cost to us. So if we can go ahead and get it on and then get the paperwork done close to, we're not close to that time, we're not really losing any kind of significant revenue or costing the county any kind of significant cost there. So we really need to do better on that customer service issue. So we talked about that, and I'm told the administration is going to work on that. We also voted to accept a almost $440,000 grant for the juvenile court for a commitment alternative program. This is the 6th year, I guess they've been getting it since 2013, that we've gotten this grant. So that's what we did in the Finance Committee. So in Public Works today, we had several items, several procurement items. So one of which I wanted to bring up was a water meter procurement. So just, buying a bunch of water meters, having a bunch of that inventory on hand so we can put them in. Well, we were able to save significant money with the audit there. The auditor looked at that procurement, and while it was just too large, it was initially like $21 million, and I think it was just sort of an over just sort of a large number that wouldn't have been used in the contract, so just too much bandwidth in a contract. So we were able to whittle that number from $21 million to $8 million. So That's not true savings there, but it will amount to some savings because there will not be the waste of over procuring those items, and we can wait until another time period to do that. So a good function of the auditor. It's working well. Look what he did. We went from $21 million procurement to an $8 million procurement. So good job. We also talked about the DeKalb Transit Master Plan, this is just an executive summary, and it is a draft. It's not the final version. This will go into our Transportation Master Plan, so this is a component of that. The cities around the county have been part of the process. We've had a lot of community meetings. They've been all around the county. So all kinds of people have been participating in coming up with this master transit plan that again gets integrated into our master transit or master transport or comprehensive transportation plan. So what the board has in committee, we agreed to recommend to the Board of Commissioners to approve this resolution, which basically adopts this transit piece to go in our comprehensive transportation plan. This transit master plan nothing is set in stone in it. It has various options that all need further review and vetting and communication, and this is the steps to implementation in the back of it. And so what I'll say is it includes continuing to educate stakeholders and the public, to gain consensus from everybody from the CEO's office to the Board of Commissioners and all the cities, and then 3, agree with everybody on any if there are any potential funding approaches. I have talked about this. Some people have suggested, DeKalb's going to come and ask for an additional tax, an additional MARTA tax or transit tax of some sort. I asked directly to the administration today, because we have not discussed that as the Board of Commissioners, and I asked them, are you intending to bring forth a proposal for an additional tax for transit? And the answer was no, we have not discussed it, and we're not bringing that forward, certainly not with this, but we have no plans to do that at this time. And their plan, as they have discussed, is to leverage more of the 1 penny you're already paying, which I think is great because you're already paying it. I don't want to, at this point in time, I don't see the need to go to the taxpayers and ask them to pay more money for transit. So, and our resolution does not suggest that at all. It talks about the items of action will be we'll work on to develop a process for this master transit plan. We'll look at these scenarios. We want to engage in education. We need to do more research to define or to decide which particular recommendation or projects we'll undertake and what the financing of those may be. We want to further discuss with MARTA the investment of the current 1 cent sales tax we're already paying. So not looking at another cent, just how they're using our current 1 cent. We want to form collaborative partnerships with the Department of Transportation, the ATL, the Atlanta Regional Commission. We want to look at land use and development codes so that they're aligned properly between all the different jurisdictions. We want to closely coordinate with our municipal partners on any projects, and if indeed there is any other funding source that they want to have or we want to have, that would be something that have to be worked out between all those groups. And again, nobody's talking about that right now. That has not been discussed at all. But we wouldn't do that without collaboration with the cities. We would discuss that with them to begin with. And these elements are going to go into our comprehensive transportation master plan. So anyone suggesting that we're about to do some sort of tax increase, so the answer is no, we're not. Okay, we are in agreement about these are some scenarios and a look at transit, and we're going to integrate that into our transportation master plan. That's all we're doing at this point. So I'm feeling positive about that. So those are the big things we worked on today. After I finish this, I'm going to go to a neighborhood meeting, and then I'm going to call it a day. So please join me again next time for another edition of Nancy Jester Reports.